Let the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my Redeemer. Psalm 19, verse 14. Hello, my name is Keith Lee. With this presentation, I hope to explain my personal and professional career goals and how important communication pertains to achieving these goals. My life goal is to help others, to be a role model for my children, to exemplify what it means to be a Christian by helping others, by being supportive, showing compassion, empathy, and encouragement. My career goal is an extension of those personal goals. To achieve this, I work at a state prison as a case manager. My work primarily centers around rehabilitation. And currently, I'm working towards a master's, which would allow me to have more opportunities within the department, more opportunities to help other people. A little bit of background information regarding my behavior blend. My uniquely you report indicates that I'm a combination of an S and C type. The S type is passive and people-oriented, while the C type is also passive but task-oriented. They like to research and discover facts, weigh the evidence, and proceed slowly to a logical conclusion. This is very true. I like to do research and I attempt to understand the ins and outs of whatever task I'm dealing with and reach a logical conclusion rather than making assumptions. For example, I have to assess programming needs for inmates on my caseload. This includes knowing what their high risk factors are. What are the things that could cause them to reoffend once they're released into the community again? To gather the information that I need for each person, I have to look at their criminal history, police reports, any type of prison disciplinary actions, and I also conduct interviews with them. I ask both closed and open-ended questions about the crimes they committed, substance abuse use, mental health history, education, employment history, community support, and family background. The interviews are important because this encourages face-to-face communication. My behavior blend also states that I'm better in small groups or in one-on-one situations, which is also true. So what are some of the interpersonal communication barriers that I face? Well, working as a classification counselor in the state prison, I have a caseload of about 75 inmates, and I currently work at a part of the prison that treats mentally ill inmates. All of the inmates in my caseload has some type of mental health illness. Some are bipolar, some have borderline personalities, some suffer from severe anxiety, some are suicidal. Keeping the personalities on my caseload to focus on what I'm seeing and getting them to communicate their thoughts to me can be a challenge, as well as actually addressing their high risk. Peterson, who wrote our text, Why Don't We Listen Better, talks about two levels of communication, one being limited. It's just basically exchanging information, giving the facts. What I need to accomplish with my caseload is two-way communication. Two-way communication is a deeper understanding, a deeper communication. Peterson states that two-way communication, you must develop trust. It's a difference of being strangers compared to friends. Well, I'm not there to be their friends. Uh, Friendships are not allowed between inmates and staff because it can lead to staff being compromised. But what I do want and what I can do is build rapport. I can earn the person's trust and let them know that I'm there for their best interests. I want the people on my caseload to know that I take my job seriously, that I believe in rehabilitation, and that they can trust that I'm not judging them for their past actions and I'm not looking for reasons to punish them. The punishment is their time in prison. Another challenge would be to communicate more effectively with confidence when addressing large groups. This goes back to my behavior blend, my C personality blend. Now, what are my resources? I've actually found some very useful resources in all of our text books that we use. One, avoid defensive communication. Bridges Not Wall, the book Bridges Not Wall mentions defensive communication, which undermines effective communication. Defensive communication is when someone perceives or anticipates a threat. This is from Stewart, page 352. This may cause resistant noncompliance. I run into that a lot in my work. It's not my job to punish the individual. It is to evaluate them and put them in a programming that will best suit them, one that will give them life skills or tools to make them more successful when they do go back out into the community. However, considering that I am evaluating a person's risk and talking to them about their past actions, it's difficult not to seem like you are judging the person. Some ways to reduce defensive communications include being careful not to be too controlling, let the person address concerns, show empathy, and remain professional. Another resource, Peterson mentions a way to fine tune a conversation and not use too much authority. Peterson said inappropriate interrogation uh, can be bad. Avoid close-end question. Take time to reflect between questions. Be careful not to use too many why questions, which could put the person on the defensive. And that was from page 137. Okay, another resource from a different text. Creating and building on positive relationship, maintaining, showing empathy, warmth, and being genuine. One way to demonstrate this, I'll be mentioning in behavior entries in my behavior plans. In my action plan. I believe that empathy is the most important thing that we do. In our text, Helping Skills for Service Workers, empathy is defined as understanding another person and communicating that understanding with that person on page 56. This is vital when you're trying to build rapport with a person. Warmth is to refrain from judgment and to show that the other person has worth. It is especially important in prison, as many inmates suffer from mental illness, addictions, and past abuse themselves. Being genuine is the next step, which is basically being sincere. If you're not sincere, then that affects your credibility. The word will get around that you're not really there to help the person. And a next resource I actually found through our school library was an article by John Larson, who mentioned in his Ways to Communicate Better. And the name of the article is, If You Want to Communicate Better at Work, Shut Up and Think. So his suggestion is to think before you speak. He stated that communication is more than just words. It's how and when you choose to share information. It's the body language, the tone, and quality of your voice. Build a reputation by gaining a reputation. Avoid flaunting power, having overconfidence, but you can have confidence, but also be aware of your audience. Be prepared to use different approaches on different people. If someone is having mental instability, I may have to be more patient and be prepared to repeat myself. If someone is struggling with suicidal thoughts or recent loss, then I may have to show even more empathy and show that concern, verbal and nonverbal. During the actual conversation, he cautions to avoid commentary or interjecting. So when the person is talking, make sure that you're not cutting the person off. That definitely doesn't show empathy. And 5 things that he suggested are to pay attention, show that you're listening, provide feedback, defer judgment, respond appropriately. Now, my action plan. It's fortunate that I work for a state service that has put into place a system that encourages communication. So we already have a system in place that makes anyone who works in my field sit and look and have a face-to-face conversation with the person, which is great. And what I would plan on doing is implementing those resources into what we already have. We have a program called Case Management, Advanced Case Management. So what I would do is first start by asking the person if they have any questions or concerns. It's a way to show that you value their opinion. It's also helpful because it's allowed them to focus better. Asking open-ended questions. I'm going to try to stay away from any closing questions. It may be impossible to eliminate all of them, but I'm going to focus mostly on the open-ended questions. Actively listen and show that you're understanding. Use nonverbal clues such as nodding and looking at the person in the eyes. Show concern with empathy and warmth. Reflect when the person answers the questions. Don't judge, for example. You wouldn't say, for an example, oh, so you started using that 12 when your dad started abusing you. Did you tell anyone about your abuse? Why did you continue to use when you were older? Those questions will put the person on the defensive. You don't want to put the person on defensive. Instead, you can say, I'm sorry that your father was abusive. you first started using drugs, especially at such a young age. Show that empathy. Show that you're concerned. Be genuine. And then say, hey, I can only imagine how that felt. Use empathy, warmth, be genuine. These questions are not meant to be interrogation. They've already been found guilty of their crimes. The goal is to get them to buy into and participate into the program. So you really want to try to instill self-worth into the person. For example, I've had other people in my caseload with past situations such as yours. They've excelled at taking the substance abuse classes and have done well once they released. Take your time in prison as preparing you for a clean state. Utilize this program. Show that you're concerned to the person. Explain why you want them into the program and try to get them to buy in. How to address larger groups? Well, the best technique for me is just to get out there and do it. I do a lot of one-on-one sections. Occasionally talk to 2 or 3 inmates at one time, but we have a lot of offender change programs, which will allow me to address larger groups. So the big thing I need to do is just go out there and do it and try to implement some of those other skills that I would be using in the one-on-one sessions with the larger groups, such as showing empathy, warmth, and asking questions that are not closed in, but open-ended questions that will encourage conversation. I did read an article by Mandy Day Cadler in her article, Conquer Your Fear of Public Speaking, and it offers some useful techniques to help prepare for speaking in front of large groups. Conquering your fear of public speaking, being brave, open to criticism, ask for feedback, look at it as an opportunity to grow. Accept that there will be anxiety. Act normal, let the anxiety pass, don't overstress, don't worry too much that things will go wrong. Very helpful suggestions that I'll be using in the future. In conclusion, communication is important in all walks of life, even more so in the field of human services. To be effective in my job, I need to be able to gather information, conduct interviews, to gather and clarify information, then convey that information in a non-threatening way, which will encourage participation. I will choose a verse from the Bible that best illustrate where I'm at personal and professionally. And this verse here I've read it a few times, and it really sums up where I'm at in my professional and personal life and where I've been at reflectively. Hebrews 13 verses 2 through 5 best sums up my current views and beliefs. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. Remember those who are in prison, as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you are in the body. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled. For God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. Keep your life free from love of money, and be content with what you have. For he shall say, I will never leave nor forsake you.